What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. My name is Nash, and today I'm going to be showing you how to rearrange data as well as how to sort the data using pivot tables. And if you have not watched the first episode, this is the second episode or second part of this series. So go ahead and watch that because it's going to make more sense if you watch that. If you have not, it's not going to make sense. But go ahead and watch that. But today I'm going to continue with that and show you how you different ways of arranging or rearranging your data and how you can sort it and how you can this is probably going to be the last one when it comes to sorting data using pivot tables. After that, we're going to go into other things that I actually do. I've worked as an analyst where I was working with data pretty much 24/7, or whenever I was at work I was working with data. So these are things that analysts actually use, whether you're a financial analyst, data analyst, and things like that. This is the same thing, same things that they use on a daily basis. So let's go ahead and minimize this. We're gonna go ahead and right here. I'm gonna move this to the middle here because last time I was blocking this area here, so you guys can see how I was building the pivot table. All right, so minimize this. All right, so this is what we had from last time. So as you can see, we had a bunch of things on the rows. And as I expressed last time, I did say that this is how I usually build my pivot tables. I like to put everything in rows to where I'm going to be able to see it on each row, right? We have our titles up here and we have the numbers down here. All right, so let's make this look a lot better. I'm going to select everything by selecting all. We have all the data here, okay? So this is what it looks like. It's based in rows, right? So I want to show you different ways of doing this because you can actually put it in columns, you can put it in values. These are all different ways of doing this. So the reason I put the occupation in filter, because if you go back to the actual raw data, you're gonna see that the occupation, let's go to the top actually so you guys can see. So this is the occupation title here, right? They have all possible titles for each job, right? So if you look at, let's look at, what's the longest one here? Like this one right here. So first line supervisors of office and administrative support workers. They also have another title called accounts payable supervisors. They also have another one called billing department supervisors. They also have another one called billing supervisor. So everything is in one line, right? So they can account for all these job titles. So in order to save space and make my data look really good or clean, I decided to put this on in the filters where I can actually filter by picking one of these. So I want to look at accountants. I can click on this and I'm going to have the accountant's data over here. Okay. So that's why I put this on the occupational title. These are decisions that you have to make if you are building a pivot table for someone else to look at. You have to make sure that it is clean, it is not confusing, and this makes it more efficient when you have this on the title here, right? They can, expand this. So if you go to the bottom right corner here, you can even expand this, right? To where you can actually see everything, some of these long titles here, right? You're going to be able to select a bunch of things. You can even select multiple things, right? You can select, let's say you want to select 3 things. We have the data over here, okay? If you want to learn how to build this, go ahead and watch the first video if you have not done so already, because this is not going to make sense because we're already done building this halfway. So one thing I wanted to show you guys is going to be how you can use columns when it comes to this, okay? So I'm going to build a different pivot table for this so I don't want to mess with this one. And like I said before, this is how I usually build my pivot tables. I put everything in rows, when I can. So let's go back to employment projections. This is going to be our raw data that we downloaded from BLS. So let's go to the top right here. Top. I'm going to build a brand new pivot table. I'm going to go to insert, go to pivot table, or you can just click up here to pick the basic one. You want to make sure that the table range is selected. Usually it auto selects everything on here. If not, go ahead and select everything. And we're going to build this on a new worksheet. Go ahead and hit OK. We have a new worksheet now. So what you can do is let's build a basic pivot table. Let's say you want to see the occupational title, which is pretty much the job title, and how employment is going to be in 2030. Okay. And let's say you want to see the total. So let's go to, I'm going to pick occupational title right here. Click that. And I'm going to put this in columns here, right? These are going to be the columns. So what's going to happen is instead of putting it in different rows, if you go back to our original pivot table, you see that everything is, or it's actually not in rows, but Right now, it's gonna put it in columns. So a column is when it's horizontal like this, right? So you have different columns, right? So this is a column right here. A is a column right here, right? And you go to B, this is a column right here. So these titles are so long, right? Because they have every possible title for each job that if you put it in a column, it's going to expand the column like this. So this is just one column with just this data for the first job, which is accountants, and the different, titles that comes with being an accountant or the different variations. So that's why I did not put this as a column in my original data. I put it as a title, as a filter. Now, watch this. If I change this to I'm gonna click on the. Sometimes your pivot table is gonna disappear. If you click outside, you can click on it and it will pop up. And if it doesn't, you can right click on the any of these columns where there's pivot table data. Right click and go to show field list right here. Now, if you right click somewhere out here, right here, you're not gonna see the show field list option. So you have to click where the pivot table data is, right here. There you go. So if I move this to rows, look what's gonna happen. It's gonna put it in different rows. So now we have, starting from row 4, we have this title, this title, this title. So that's the difference between columns and what is it, and rows, right? Rows is gonna put it in like this, like stacking it up. Now, columns are going to put it right next to each other. Now, if you have something as long as this is a decision you have to make on your own. Do you want it to look like that, where you have a column that is this long, right? So let's go ahead and make this a little smaller. I'll make this to about right here, all right? And one thing too, if you want to resize all of this, you can just select everything by going up here. Select this little arrow that's facing right here and double click over here like that. That's gonna resize everything to kind of like fit most of the text. This is really long, so it's not gonna, kind of like fit everything. All right. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go ahead and let's go back to the pivot table. Let's say I want to grab the 2030 data, right? So the 2030 employment data. I'm gonna put this in values, right? All right. So let me go ahead and select everything here. Double click. Actually, let's make it small, actually, to about right here. I don't really care about the titles, right? All right, so what's going to happen here is we have the sum of 2030. So what usually happens if you put something in the values, it's going to count it as a value. So if I was going to put this as a row, it's just going to put the data over here. So if you go to the right all the way where it's at, let me not scroll too much. Let's go to right here. Actually, it's down here actually as a row. So we have the occupation title in the row, and we also have the employment in 2030 as a row. So 4 is the titles, and then 5 is the number itself, right? So that's why I want to put this in values, right? So it's right next to this. So let me select everything here. When I double click right here, or actually just make this smaller because it's gonna resize everything that's over here. Okay, all right. So now we have the sum of employment in 2030. Now, the cool thing about values is if you go to the bottom here, damn, that's so long. So I'm gonna hold Control, click the down arrow. That's gonna go to the last column or last cell that has data in it. So hold Control, down arrow. There you go. Now we're at the bottom. It gives you a grand total. That's the cool thing about using values. So if you're working with dollar amounts, right? Let's say this was different company names or customer names, and you're trying to figure out how much money you brought in, per customer or client. You can put the clients in the rows, put the values, put the money that they brought you in as values, and you have a grand total at the end. It does it for you, right? So that's how you can use grand total here, okay? Now, what you can also do is you can, let's say here, you can put the grand totals in the columns if you want to go crazy right here. So let's go all the way up here. You can put those in the columns. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna make this a little smaller. All right. So you have the actual, so this would not really make sense if you're building a pivot table like this. It just depends on how the data is built. This does not make sense because it's putting these amounts in the columns. But how would you, use this data? So let's say if I was going to add this, I want to add the median annual wage in the rows as well. I want to add, let's say, these are things like when you're building a pivot table, you want to make it to in a way that someone is going to be able to understand what you are trying to portray, right, as the data. So this was pretty much me showing you guys how you can use values and rows. So values are good if you're working with dollar amounts and you want a grand total at the end, right? So that's really important if you're using values. You can use them to build like simple pivot tables like this, right? All right, so I'm gonna delete this page here or this worksheet here because that's what I wanted to show you guys. All right, so let's see here. Delete that. Delete. All right, so we have our data here. So whenever you build, let's go back to pivot right here. This one. I'm gonna move this sheet to over here, so you can click on it. Oh, click and hold, drag it to over here, put it right there. All right. So this is our data here, okay? So the data is essentially telling us the employment projections between 2020 and 2030. Now, let's say I'm trying to pick a major in college and I'm trying to decide between a bunch of majors. So say I want to pick, let's start with, all right, so when you have multiple things selected, another trick, you can click on select all, just hit on all, it's going to select everything. You can hit all again. This is going to deselect everything. So let's say I want to be an accountant. One, I want to look into that as well. I want to look into being an actuary, right? My brother is at. Go ahead and check out the podcast. I have a podcast. The link is in the description below. We did an episode, which is like 40 minutes long with him, with my brother. So go ahead and check that out. I'll select that as well. That's all I want to look into. You can actually search things as well. But before you search anything after selecting a bunch of things, go ahead and hit OK. This is going to pick the two things that we selected. But if you go back here, click the drop down, let me go ahead and make this a little bigger. I'm going to look for finance, right? All right, so when you look for something, it's going to select everything along, like anything that has those keywords. So you might want to be a little specific. Finance. Let's try, actually, let's make this a little smaller. So let's pick, maybe not, I'm going to deselect business teachers. I'm also gonna, let's see here, I'm gonna I'm gonna select let's do financial and investments analysts, financial clerks, like all this. I'm gonna deselect the last actually let's pick this. Okay, I think this is good. So when you're selecting additional things after you've already selected something like we did before, you always want to select the first option here, which is add to current filter, right? Go ahead and add that, and it's gonna add to this. If you don't do that, it's gonna replace the data that you had before, and it's gonna replace it with what you just added. So that's what you want to avoid. All right, so now that I've picked some of the jobs that I would want to do by 2030, or the jobs that I'm trying to explore to see the employment in 2030, what I can do is I can just use this data, right? So one thing you can do is you can create another worksheet here, and you can list the job titles here, and just copy and paste the data. But what I like to do is once I pick this, because I like using this drop down because it allows me to search, allows me to do a bunch of things. But another thing you actually do is you can click on, let's go click on the pivot table data. This is the headers. I'm going to go ahead and right click and go to show field list here. Actually, no. I'm going to go ahead and right click and go to show field list. And what I can do is I can actually grab the occupation title from the filters and put it in the rows. I'm putting on the first one. First one, there we go. We have it here. So what it's going to do is it's going to already come pre-filtered, right? It's just going to come and bring back what we already selected when we're using the filters. Now, you don't have to do it this way. You can actually just put this in the filters to begin with, and you can use this over here to add as filters. But I wanted to show you guys the option of having, being able to filter data as a filter. All right. So what I'm going to do here is what I like to do with pivot tables. Once I built my pivot table and I have the data that I need from this, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the table, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click over here, first cell, click drag all the way to the end over here, all the way down. One thing I try to avoid copy and pasting is going to be the grand totals, because I don't really need that, right? I don't need this summed up to show me the grand totals. I just need the raw data. Now I'm going to go ahead and right click and copy, right? So it's going to allow me to copy the data. Now I want to show you a quicker way to do this using shortcuts. So let's say I'm going to go ahead and click the first, the first cell that is data. I'm going to go ahead and hold Control, Shift, click the right arrow to select everything on the right side. That's selected. Now I'm going to click the down arrow to select everything that goes all the way down. Down, and I'm still holding Control Shift. Now this is going to select everything, including the grand totals, the grand total of 7 that we're trying to exclude. Now what you can do is you can hold Shift and click the up arrow. This is going to go ahead and go up by 1 row, right? So we have this selected. Now you do Control C. That's going to allow you to select everything. So that's kind of like the shortcut way of doing this if you want to do this a little faster. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my second sheet. I'm going to go ahead and right click and go to paste, right? So you want to right click and paste its values. So when you paste its values, it's going to give you raw data, right? So paste its values, this is what it looks like. Now I'm going to give you an example of what happens if you don't paste its values. I'm going to go to this, copy again, make sure that is copied. Let's go ahead and paste right here. This is just regular paste. What you're doing here is you're pretty much copying the different formats, the different, sometimes you might even copy and paste the pivot table itself. So I always try to paste its values. I'm going to delete this because we don't need this. So I'm going to delete this. I'll show you one more time how to paste its values. So I'm going to go ahead and right click here, copy, go to your the empty sheet, right click, paste its values. When you see the 1, 2, 3 here, that's values, right? This is just raw data. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bigger so I can see the first job here. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and kind of like analyze this data. So you know that the first is the occupational title, the job title. You also have the employment in 2020. This is going to be in numbers, right? So you want to make sure that this is in numbers. So we're going to change the formatting on here. So go to general. So select, you can select all the data here, right? You can select, even select the entire column, or you just select the data. This is a small data set, so I can just select this easily. Click the drop down here. You want to make sure that you're on home. Drop down here. It's most likely going to say general. Click on number. This is a number. The next one is going to be employment in 2030. This is a number as well. You do the same thing and select that number. So I'm going to show you another trick of if you don't want to have to go all the way up here and redo the same format. If you know that this is a number, this is a number, what you can do is you can actually click on the cell that has a number, right? This is a number in here. You can click on Format Painter. Now what this is going to do, it's going to copy the format, which is number, and it's going to put it in here. So I can click on this. So you can see this turns it into a number, right? This turns into a number. If I go to the cell below this is still general. So I can do the same thing. I can click on a number that's up here. This is a number cell. You can see that on here. Format Painter. I can click on this one and drag down so everything can have the same format, right? So we have numbers here. So the next one is employment percentage, right? This is a percentage. So you want to make sure that this is a percentage as well. I'm going to go to up here, go to percentage. There we go. Now we have a percentage. Well, I don't want it to have, 2 zeros at the end. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this by clicking, or make it decrease the decimal by clicking this over. So this is to decrease, this is to increase. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Maybe just a 0 is fine. That's fine. Now the next one's going to be openings. This is a number, obviously. I'm going to go ahead and switch this to number. There you go. Next one is wage. This is a dollar amount. What I'm going to go ahead and click the drop down. Click on where's currency here. So dollar amount, right? There you go. Now these are essentially entry level. We have work experience. We also have what else? We have on the job training and occupational title. I think we had a count in here. Yeah. So this is a count of occupational title. We don't need this over here. So that's just the title. So Yeah, this was literally on the beginning, like at the top here, like over here. But for now, we can just delete this because we don't need this for this over here. Okay. All right. So this is our data here. Okay. Now you're gonna be able to analyze this data a lot better, a lot more. All right, so now that we have our titles here, let's go ahead and make this a little smaller to about right here so we can only see the first job title here. So the reason that I have not separated this is because you might want to see the different titles because the first one might not be the one you're familiar with. But if it's something that that doesn't work, you can always expand this to see the other titles. So I'm gonna go ahead and make this a little smaller to about right here. Now you can actually analyze this. You can see that if you wanted to be a financial clerk over here, you can see that the employment in 2020 was, I think this is in thousands or something like that. I forgot to look at how the data was arranged. And you can see obviously that it went up from 31,000 to 34,000. It might be in millions. I'm just gonna keep it at thousands. I'm gonna say this is in thousands for the context of this video. Now there's 34,000. That is a 750% increase between 2020 and 2030. Now I can look at the openings. It's like, I think this is actually in percentages. I'm pretty sure. Let's go back to the data. So it's always good to reference the original data because that's going to help you kind of like format this and, make more sense. So we can go to annual. How much are you going to get paid? Let me go ahead and select this actually. Select this, go to home, select this in yellow. Okay. 44,000 in 2020. That's how much you'd get paid if you're gonna get this job in 2020. That's the average. It doesn't mean you're gonna get that same dollar amount, but this also works if you're negotiating your salary. You're gonna be able to say, oh, the average. You might want to break it down by state, but that's the average. And you can even look at the entry level education. This is a high school diploma. You also have the work experience, right? How do you need a college degree? Do you need, a bunch of things? Do you need prior experience to a different job? Nope, zero. You also have job training. It's short term, so this tells you that the job is pretty easy if it doesn't take that long to train anyone. Now we can actually arrange this. Let's say you wanted to arrange this by the most paid, right? That's the thing you care about. You want to get paid more money. I'm gonna select let's say cell A1. It could be B, it could be B, C. I like to select A1. I'm gonna go ahead and hold Control Shift and hit L. So the letter L on the keyboard, L is in Lauren. This is gonna put filters on here. Okay, filters, they're gonna be on here. Another way to do this, you can do Control Shift L to get rid of them. All right, so once I do that, I can go to, let's say I'm only gonna be looking at the median annual wage. I can go up here, click this drop down on the filter, and I'm gonna go ahead and filter by largest to smallest. Okay, now we have the $134,000 job, the 111, 89, all the way to $44,000. So what is the top job? It is the financial managers. You can even explore the titles here. You can click in the cell. You're gonna see it up here. Banking center manager, banking manager, city treasurer. You have a bunch of things here, and you can go to over here as well. Financial advisors. So this is gonna allow you to kind of like sort the data. There's also a bunch of ways if you wanna, we're gonna get into sorting in future videos. This was just a quick way of doing it, just so that it makes sense to you guys. This is just gonna sort by the highest pay based on the data that we've built using our pivot table. You can see that, the job that pays more money requires more work experience, obviously. And, there's obviously no on the job training because they expect you to know it because you already have experience. All right, so this is a quick analysis that you can do with the data that's going to allow you to pick the data that you want. Like we did, we picked the jobs that we're looking at that we're interested in by the year 2030, and we're able to narrow that down to those jobs, and we're able to look at the data that's relevant to those jobs, right? Sometimes you're always going to get data sets that have more data than you need. If you get a data set that has only the data you need, then that's good. But for the most part, you're gonna get a data set that has a bunch of data that you don't need. So pivot tables are gonna allow you to kind of like rearrange that. And there's a bunch of other things that you can do to analyze the data, like putting the filters, sorting the data from largest to smallest, highlighting the data to highlight the things that you're looking at, and things like that. So we're going to be covering all of these things in future videos. But for this video, I wanted to show you a quick way of rearranging data and sorting the data in ways that are going to make sense to you as an analyst and be able to, write an analysis on it, right? If you were doing your research, you'd be able to tell based on what we're working on. Well, this is the job that's going to have the most growth, but the money, you're not going to get paid more. When it comes to, how much you can get paid, this is the job that you can get paid the most. The growth is at this much percentage, and there's no on-the-job training. You actually need 5 years of, experience, which might be a college degree and things like that. But other than that, that is pretty much it for how to use pivot tables. I think I went in depth. This was a pretty long video. In the next video, we're going to be doing something different. So stay tuned, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you can keep up with the series. My goal is to upload one video per day, going over this until we're done with the whole series, and we're going to start something else new. But thank you so much for watching. Make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button below if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.